Hey everyone, Neil here. I would just like you to know that today's episode of The Pull Bag is brought to you by DeCN.com because I was the one who had to edit this thing. Through the use of digital audio engineering trickery and selling Mike Blanchard's soul to the devil, I was able to recover this episode from a monophonic sound source with wildly inconsistent audio levels. You may notice some audio anomalies, particularly during crosstalk, but I assure you it was the best I could do. And with that humble brag, I hope you enjoy the show.
Hi, this is John Barber from IDW Publishing. You are listening to The Pull Bag.
My calculations are correct. When this baby hits 88 miles per hour, you're gonna see some serious shit.
Welcome to The Pull Bag. Join us as we dig out our latest comics and discuss them with a rotating panel of the GCRN crew. So sit back and enjoy this week's Pull Bag.
We are all out of time. The Pull Bag is happy to bring you our Back to the Future IDW Comics coverage here in February 2018. This is brought to you by the Cast Radio Network and listeners like Bondo Mike. He's a longtime GCRN listener and friend who has given to us over the years so that we might be able to keep this thing going. I'm, of course, TFG1Mike. Joining me is OptimusSolo. Hello, sir.
2 in a row? What is happening in the world?
Yeah, really? Episode 301 of The Pull Bag. It's time to grab a Pepsi free and jump into the DeLorean with us as we go back to the future. This week, in our second Spotlight episode on BTTF Comics, we're finding ourselves in a Continuum Conundrum. This series is all about... Oh.
Dun dun dun.
Yeah. Exactly. Dun dun dun. Technically, it's how Griff took over, sort of. But anyway, in part 1, I just want to go over this really quickly, folks. What is so great about the IDW trades is that in this one, because it's all one story arc, it's 6 parts, one story arc. It is all story by John Barber and Bob Gale, script by John Barber, letters by Sean Lee, series edits by Tom Waltz. Hey, I've interviewed that guy. Part 1 art is done by Marcelo Ferreira. Inks are by Marcelo and Phila Fabio. Colors by Diego Rodriguez and Jose Luis Rio. Part 2, pretty much the same. It's pretty much the same team throughout. Colors on Part 2 are also done by Esther Sands, along with Jose Luis Rio. But yeah, it's basically the same art team throughout the whole 6 parts. I know we had said last time when we done Volume 1 that we kind of had a little issue with, the art changes consistently, but at least in this one, it's consistent art for the entire arc. As always, you get a letter from Bob Gale at the front of this trade, which is very, very cool.
Yeah, so, I think that helps. I think, like we said in the first part, that it's good to have this gentleman who's obviously been with the franchise from the beginning, knows what he's talking about, has a specific agenda as far as what he's trying to do. And this is now the first part where, unlike the last one where there was a bunch of little things like, little questions that weren't answered or little things that could be fun anecdotes. Now this is a chance to give a full story as far as carrying on with the same people in the same universe, not changing any of that stuff.
Absolutely. Continuum Conundrum Part 1, Continuum Concerns.
Yeah, I mean, we basically get introduced to Marty in 1986, so I know it's tough to keep the timeline going around, but we start in 1986, at least in this one, and Biff is where he should be, cleaning Marty's car.
Mm-hmm.
So you get the whole general cast that you're used to. So you get Marty, you get Biff, you get Needles, you get Jenny. So I mean,
or get it right. Come on now,
Jenny.
So you get Forrest Gump here.
So you get the known cast returning and kind of picking up with their story. But this one introduces some interesting elements kind of as we get towards. I mean, the first part's just kind of set up, so there's not a lot to talk about as far as that.
Yes. Some of the first issue here, or the overall 6th issue of the series, is basically sort of, not necessarily a retelling of the end of the first film or the beginning of the second film, where Marty wakes up and it's his mom and goes down, and brother and older brother, younger sister, whatever, Linda and Dave are there. So
get an interesting connection there with Goldie Wilson Jr.
Yeah,
the mayor's son. And a note about Doc and kind of his return to Doc's place.
Yep.
The abandoned, I guess abandoned for the most part, and you have the DeLorean sitting there.
Yep.
With the spacesuit guy, get up in it, and all his different gadgets and whatnot. So just kind of them doing their thing, snooping around there. He's looking for some stuff, and then boom, you have an interesting individual show up.
Yep. And we get fight scenes before this with Jennifer and Marty, and then he's trying to tell all these kids this wacky time travel story, and parents are like, hey, get away from that weirdo.
Yeah, for sure. But once they end up in the Doc Brown's lab, and once this character shows up, takes off the helmet, we have Doc Brown.
Doc Brown, yep.
But the crazy thing is, he doesn't know who Marty is.
And he doesn't remember himself either half the time.
So now we have a Doc Brown that doesn't know who he is, doesn't know who Marty is, doesn't know what's going on, doesn't know where he is, when he is, etc. So that's kind of how it sets up with that little dilemma.
Yep. Pretty much. This first issue, I absolutely enjoyed it. I think it was great. I think it was a great way to continue past the Clara's story issue from last time. Some of the notes that I have written for this one, the art in this so far is great. The fact that we explore the fact that Marty is bored, you'd think that would be expected after being on such an adventure as time travel.
Yeah, I guess that is one thing that's important to bring up in this first volume. It kind of does set the stage as far as Marty missing the time travel, missing the adventures, missing being with Doc Brown. So it's like, when he goes back to life as normal, it's just not as exciting as what he has been used to through the course of the movies that we've seen, et cetera. So he's longing for that. So he's happy to see Doc Brown, but now we have the problem that Doc Brown doesn't know anything. So it's a good setup issue. It's a good cliffhanger that it kind of leaves off heading into volume 2.
Yeah, the other thing, or the second issue of volume 2 here, but the other thing about this is they also even bring back the old telegram joke, the telegram postal delivery guy.
Oh, yeah.
We've had this in our office for 70 years or whatever. That was a nice little callback to the movie.
Agreed.
But yeah, Marty is so in his element when he's in Doc Brown's lab, and Jennifer is like the ultimate skeptic about all of this.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. She's almost like the opposite of Clara. She's like the girlfriend that's not as down for the adventure.
Exactly.
I will say, though, this sets up something. You didn't mention art a little bit. I just want to get one little grievance out of the way for my... I think they do a fantastic job with all the backgrounds, a fantastic job with the vehicles and all the different artifacts and things of that nature. The one thing that bugs me a little bit about this entire volume, all 6 parts, is I feel like there is a heavy dose of inconsistency when it comes to just one character, and that's the way that Marty is drawn.
Yeah.
I feel like his face is different shapes. I feel like he is different ages. I feel like some of them look like movie Marty. Some of them look like somebody I've never seen before. So I don't feel like they struggle as much with Doc or with all the other characters that we know, even with Needles and Biff and stuff like that. I think they're pretty consistent, but for some reason it seems like they always do Marty slightly different as far as some of his facial features. Yeah. And I don't know if I'm alone in that, but that somewhat bugged me.
Yeah, I'm like, wait, okay, that kid is in the vest and the sneakers and all that, but like that's very much more adult, mature Marty than.
Yeah, if it wasn't for the costume that we know he's in, at times you might question who that is.
Exactly.
So that's my only issue with the art. Other than that, I think it's top notch.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like the part 2 cover, Continuum Confusion, like, okay, that's Doc in the net. Obviously, the DeLorean's in the background there. And Marty kind of looks like what he's supposed to look like. But again, it's all about artist interpretation, but, you know.
I know he's making a weird facial expression in there, but just taking that cover picture, if you were looking at like the 2 pages together, that one and the one next to it, like the one where he's saying, "It's me, Marty, and you remember Jennifer," that doesn't look like the same Marty that's on the cover.
No, it doesn't at all.
It looks like a much younger version. Yeah. So, and then like the one picture right above that, his face and neck is much longer than we're used to. So it's just a little details, but I'm being picky.
Yeah, I mean, is it gonna destroy our enjoyment of the story and what's being told to us? No, not at all. But it is an honest critique about it because it's inconsistent art, is what it is. Like,
yeah, and I know they're doing time travel, but this Marty in this issue is the same Marty we're following through the whole issue, basically. Unless I'm forgetting something. Like it's not like Doc, where sometimes we get to see different versions in different time periods where they flash back and flash forward and stuff like that. We have the same Marty in the way he is depicted as far as the art form. It looks like he ranges from age like 14 to age like 24 at different times.
And it's not just him, honestly. Like, it's him and Jennifer both throughout this entire thing. I've noticed when I went back and I reread it right before we recorded this. Like the panels you've just mentioned. You look at Marty and Jennifer where he's like, "It's me, Marty," and they're all kind of comical looking. You go down to the next panel where Doc is saying, "I've never seen either of you before in my life," where the two of them are standing there looking like they're 8-year-olds out of kindergarten or something. Like, seriously, look at both of them. His neck is so short. Her face is just like...
Well, the problem is, like, at least those two panels, like, it looks like they're the same people. Yeah. But, like, if you compare that with the one that's right above that, where Doc's in the net saying, "What do you mean, who are we?" That Marty does not look like the two Martys below that.
Oh, no, not at all.
So that's kind of some of the consistency. He loses the cartoon effect. It's a much more realistic look for the one above, and it's an older one with a longer neck and more defined facial features. So it's just kind of an odd choice if it's the same person drawing all of this.
And I'm thinking, because it does say in the thing, it does say art by Marcelo and this other person. Maybe the other person did, like, sometimes IDW will give you page numbers, and other comic companies will do this too. Sometimes they'll say, "Oh, the art from page 1 to page 5 was done by this person. The art from page 6 to page 10 was done." So
right.
We would have a clear, precise way of showing you, or showing us, like, what is different, how that's being drawn differently. But like you said, like, it's that 1 or 2 panel, and then the rest of it goes back to kind of the cartoonish.
Well, yeah, and like if you follow it, and this is the last thing, I'll get off my soapbox. But if you follow the next 2 pages, where it continues with that cartoony, younger looking, more rounded features, etc. So you got that consistently. There's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8 shots of Marty that are all somewhat the same. If you were to flip the page then to the next one, there's a panel of Marty saying, "Who said anything about my truck?" Staring directly straight ahead. I have no idea who that is.
Yeah.
Like, that looks like it looks like half anime, half older. Yeah. Like, that is inconsistent. And then you have that older version now for like 2 or 3 pages where he's driving. And it looks completely different, and then it goes back to the kid version like a couple pages later. So I don't know, it's inconsistent.
It's very inconsistent.
But enough about the Marty conundrum. But so we get into part 2 of this one, which is the Continuum Confusion. So obviously that's where we left off.
Yeah. Did you notice as we're going through these panels of pointing out the different ages of Marty McFly? Did you notice as they're speeding down where somebody in the DeLorean says slow down? Did you notice the guy on the bench? It's red. It's the old drunk red.
Nice. No, I missed that one when we were going through it the first time. But obviously the confusion part, Continuum Confusion, titled because of the confusion with Doc Brown and not knowing who he is, not knowing who everybody is. So that's going to be what the first half of this little volume is dealing with, is trying to figure out how we can get Doc Brown to remember what's going on. And obviously there is they're trying to obtain a vehicle. So they get the DeLorean, there's cop chases, and then eventually we end up with an interesting Doc Brown running through the neighborhood with no clothes hardly.
Yeah.
You get that as he exits his spacesuit. And it's just kind of an interesting deal because it's almost like an Encino Man thing where they're trying to lead this Doc Brown around who doesn't know what time period is he in, or what anything is going on. So it's just kind of like that lost person from another time era situation that we've seen sometimes in other movies.
Yep. And they go back to Marty's house, and his parents are really worried about him. Apparently, I know, maybe Betty can recommend a therapist for him. George, what? Betty's not crazy. Why would she know who should Marty see?
Yeah, basically. And so then they're trying to obtain or trying to find a certain vehicle.
Yes, the vehicle that Doc originally came in on.
Which looks like something out of Chitty Chitty Bang Bang or something.
Yeah, it
like
does.
Crossed with I don't know, something from Dr. Seuss or whatever. Like this thing does not look like it should work. It's like half 1860s, half 1920s, with some random futuristic elements.
Yeah, it's like something the Three Stooges would try to ride. Is it? I have to talk about this because it bugs the hell out of me. It always bugs the hell out of me, even in the movies. Is it just me, or is George McFly extremely one-dimensional? Like, seriously.
Yeah, he is.
I mean, so in this scene that we talked about a minute ago, where they're upstairs having Doc put the clothes on, and they hear noise, and what was that? I don't know, Lorraine. Wait here. Whoever's there, you should know I'm pretty good at confrontations. I get it. Crispin Glover didn't want to come back for the sequels. Fine, whatever. He's a weirdo. I don't care about him and his personal life and whatever else, but the character that he embodied, the character that Gale and Zemeckis came up with, I wish had a little bit more to him, and maybe we'll do that eventually in this series from IDW. Who knows? I mean, we talked about it last episode, where you weren't that thrilled with the whole Lorraine and George part of the storyline in the first volume, but if you're gonna come back to the parents' house or come back to Marty's house and sneak through, please give George some better lines, please.
Yeah, no, I agree. He is pretty much one-dimensional. Going back to the story a little bit, you do have this situation where it's kind of interesting because, like we talked about, Doc doesn't know anything, but you also have Marty who's excited about going on more adventures. And the only thing that's holding him back is Doc not remembering anything. So he's he needs Doc to remember things so that they can have their fun adventure, time travel, et cetera, et cetera. And it kind of adds a little motivation as to why Marty is willing to help Doc and try to figure this out, because he needs him to remember in order for his adventure to continue. So, I mean, it's to the point where Doc doesn't even remember that he has kids, et cetera. So they're looking for, his original, or his, that time travel machine that he had used from the 1860s or whatever. And that leads them to a car lot and run in with Needles.
Needles Part 2, Round 2. Yeah, Jennifer tries to sweet talk the guy, $300. I'm like, oh, God. And then Needles comes in with some alcohol, and that's all it takes, really. Seriously. Come on.
Yeah. So they're going to have a little race, and winner takes all, and that's kind of how this part ends, is McFly and Needle is gonna chase each other down over this little time machine that's in the back.
Yep. Because it's still attached to the tow truck, and it's one of those things where, like, even like I like that Marty is staying and he's kind of growing, even though Needles isn't. That chicken stuff doesn't work anymore and whatever. Like, Marty actually has a plan here. It's not like movie Marty, even though it is winner takes all. When we get to the next chapter in a moment, he does have some sort of a plan to kind of ruin Needles.
Right, which is odd, which is an interesting switch because, usually Doc's the one with the plan, and Marty's just kind of reacting to things. So it's interesting where now Doc's not going to be able to do that, so you have to have Marty coming up with the plan and the ideas, and that's not what he's used to. So great cover art on the part 3 cover of this time machine. The steam time car that Doc Brown and his spacesuit are on. So it's a pretty cool look. I like that cover.
Yeah.
And we jump times now. So part 3 is our first flashback. We're going back to 1893 when Doc is creating the steam time car.
Right. And he's getting it ready to, go on this voyage. And he goes on the voyage and he gets ready to do the time thing, and he's like, oh, in your time it'll only be moments that I'm gone. And how a steam time car can make the time travel fire trails is beyond me. But anyway, what I love here is how the passage of time happens.
Yeah.
With the 3 seasons essentially, or not 3 seasons, but night into day type thing. Into day kind of a thing where they've been waiting all night. Like, in the first one, Clara is still sitting there and Jules and Vernon running around. And the second one, Jules and Vernon are looking like they're playing Tiddlywinks or something. I don't know. It looks like they're playing with something.
Right. They're playing something of a game.
Yeah. And in the last one, she's like, her legs are just totally down and they're sleeping and Yep.
And they wake up again. They're still not there, so they're giving up hope on if they're ever going to see their dad or husband again. Yep. And then we directly go right back to where we were in 1986 with the car race sequence. It's kind of weird because they left off with the car race just about to start, and then they did a flashback in between that and when the car chase actually happens. But that's whatever. So we have Needles and Marty crashing around, and I don't know if I would engage in a race with somebody if I'm carrying a time machine on my toe.
Yeah.
That seems too dangerous to me.
It seems very dangerous. And, I mean, Marty does say, I'm not going to race you, Needles. And they are racing, but Marty is more so trying to get away from Needles than anything else. And I'm going to complain about this later, but I'm going to say this right now. The panel where you see, hey, that's my time vehicle. Be careful, Marty. Yeah, good advice. Jennifer, get the Doc out of here. The panel where it's Marty's truck in the foreground and it's Needles' truck in the background. First of all, Needles' truck is red or orangish red or whatever, and Marty's Needles' truck is like a reddish orange and the tow truck is a reddish orange, but later, for some odd reason, Jennifer assumes that, and this is much later, and I'll point this out when it happens, but she assumes that the truck that we see in shadow later is Needles. And I'm thinking, no, that's the 4x4. Why the hell would... Anyway.
All right, so we'll keep a lookout for that. So they have their chase. Marty goes bashing through a fence and onto the streets, actual streets, instead of just going through this car lot or dump lot or whatever you want to call it. So now they're out on actual streets chasing each other around. So we have the time machine's parachute that is triggered. So now he's trying to drive with a big old parachute slowing him down. So that's an interesting, element that they add there. And then, of course, one car ends up crashing.
Yep.
So
both of them do, kind of.
Well, yeah, but not into a manure truck.
No, and
that's because it's Needles.
Yeah, but that was never Needles' thing, though. That's always Biff's thing.
Right. It's just weird because if you see somebody crash into like a big old like a semi or something, you expect it to be manure in this series. But this one's what was it? All eggs?
Yeah, it was all eggs, which is fine.
Right. So I guess Needles is the Eggman.
Yep.
So, and then Doc still being somewhat
absent-minded.
Absent-minded is a good term for it, that's for sure. So they've got away from Needles, though. So we've got past that point. And they go back to Lone Pine Mall.
Yep.
For a minute.
Yep.
Try to trigger some memories and things like that.
Yep.
And then we have an eye-opening experience.
Quite literally. Yeah. So they get back to Lone Pine, and Marty explains why he's, always goes back there, because it's just where he thinks, and, we figure out that this, the dock that's here now came from 2035, so, hey, let's go back to 2035. And they figure out how to get that done, and Doc sees the note in the time vehicle, and Clara, my wife, the boys, oh my god, Doc kind of remembers.
Right.
And then he's like, once again, he forgets, and great Scott, I forgot Einstein. And, all of that.
So his memory's starting to come back.
Mm-hmm. We get one of those classic Christopher Lloyd, Doc Brown experiments with the time balloon, with the whole egg thing. And that's how they are going to time travel this time. They're going to go up in the space, not space suit, what the hell is it? Radiation suit, or dive suit or whatever, and
diving suit, yeah.
Yeah. Well, when Marty holds it up, it does not look like a dive suit. It looks like the radiation suit Doc had on in the first,
Right. But no,
anyway,
he just calls it a diving suit. Though. He says it's going to protect him from the time stream, etc., and allow him to go home. So
yeah, we're going back to the future again. Once again, adult Marty.
Very much adult Marty. That's like football adult Marty. That's the one that was like a star football team.
Yeah, that's like 1998 Varsity Blues adult Marty or something. Like somebody called James Vanderbeek and tell him whatever. Anyway, what is so cool, the ending cover to this is basically Cowboy Marty with the hoverboard. That looks more like Michael J. Fox, that cover. Looks more like Michael J. Fox than anything in this series so far.
That's true. So that leads us into part 4, which is Continuum Confrontations.
That's right.
And dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. And we have this, huge giant experiment going on with the time balloon where they're going to go up really, really high, and then they're going to drop, and they're going to reach their 88 miles per hour.
Before they go splat.
Yeah, it's a time jump skydiving thing, folks. Yay!
That's what it takes, I guess.
That's what it takes, I guess. I do absolutely love the art so far in this. How the time balloon is, how the city is lit up in that panel. Even Marty and Doc in their suits look
very
okay.
Cool.
I mean, Marty does kind of still look really, really old, but
we also get the tallest version of Jennifer that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
When she's on the hood of the car.
Yep.
Like, when did she become 6 foot tall?
I don't know. Okay, this is what I'm talking about. So they go through in time, and she's standing there, and she goes, Marty, if you crash into me, I'll kill you. So she's standing there. We get a foosh. We get fire raining down on her, which why the hell she doesn't get out of there now, I don't know. And then, what now? You see the 4x4. Needles is not driving a 4x4. She assumes it's Needles. It's not Needles. It's clearly a black 4x4. Needles' truck is red. And she jumps over the hood of the DeLorean, and I can't tell if she's wearing boots, if that's part of her, like if that's a pants skirt, like I don't really
leggings.
care.
I don't know what it is.
I don't know. Like I could understand if she was wearing that skirt and just thigh high boots, fine, whatever. But like, it just doesn't look.
Looks like her legs aren't real.
Yeah, pretty much.
So then we go to Marty and Doc, who have travel time now. They're in 2035, and they're crashing through the ceiling of the Lone Pine FU-drome.
It's Flydrome.
Okay.
It looks like FU, but it's Flydrome.
Oh yeah, that's right. Because they got the
Fly
thing.
Derby.
The
Fly
Derby. Right,
yeah.
right. So they crash right into the middle of a fly derby that's going on, which is the new sport. It's kind of like a gladiatorial type thing. It looks like.
I love the girl when they pop in when they're upside down. This was a mall when my mom was my age. Nobody goes to a mall. Buy junk on the net.
Yeah.
Dun, dun. I have a lot of notes about. Yeah. Oh, I have a lot of notes about these future aspirations, specifically after they get out of the roller derby.
Yeah.
When they get to,
they mention one during the roller derby because he says how many rejuves or how many rejuvies had you had.
Yeah.
So that must be some type of supplement, energy drink, something that this guy's having, or maybe not that. Maybe it's like an actual procedure. I don't know, but
yeah. Well, Doc Brown always talked about going to the rejuvenation chamber in 2015 and whatever else, and he got that facelift or whatever. But when they crash out of the fly derby outside, do you need a ride? Use your connection to call an Infinicar now. And then it's like, Infinicars break down on over 5% of rides. Order a Duber mobile. I'm like, really? Duper mobile? Really? You're going to do the whole Lyft Uber, like... Really?
And then they go from Infinicard to Duper Mobile to Fly Fast.
Fly Fast, yeah. Like, I know there's Uber and I know there's Lyft. I don't remember what the third one is.
Right. And then, of course, they get into a little cafe diner. Mm-hmm. You got the continuing motif of the shark.
Yep.
There's a holographic shark in there. And then, of course, the waitress is taking he has like a virtual menu that he's writing stuff down or placing the order on, I guess, which is interesting. And it's interesting because it projects all the options like right in his face, so he can pick what he wants. And it's like, I like the types here. So we got Pepsi varieties. I got to go through some of these.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Have your regulars like your Pepsi, your Diet Pepsi, your caffeine-free Pepsi, caffeine-free Diet Pepsi, and then we get limited edition Crystal Pepsi, Pepsi Throwback, Pepsi Vanilla, Pepsi Ginger, Pepsi Lime, Diet Pepsi Lemon, Pepsi Max, Pepsi XL, Pepsi Perfect. Well, that doesn't exist yet, does it? And then like a Pepsi X. I don't know if it says Energy or what, but
it's Pepsi Energy XL or Pepsi X Energy.
Yeah, it looks like there's a Pepsi Kick and a Pepsi Max and a Pepsi Perfect. I want the Pepsi Perfect.
Yeah.
What's that?
I want the Pepsi Free.
Pepsi Free, I like it.
Right.
So it's definitely a different type of diner here with some futuristic stuff with TV monitor. I mean, the TV monitors everywhere is kind of normal, but all the holographic and projection stuff is kind of interesting.
Yeah, it is very much so.
And then, of course, we have somebody else enter the diner, as usually happens in these types of situations. Mm-hmm. None other than Biff RoboCop.
Griff Tannen.
So RoboCop shows up. I'm just going to call him that.
Yep.
And he's got all the electric gadgets and gizmos, so it's basically all monitoring him like it would through RoboCop's visor. And it's showing him who's a suspect, who's guilty, who's not guilty, tells people that he's recording them, video and audio is active. And he sees Doc Brown, and it says, suspect match, identity theft, robbery, fleeing an officer of the law, reckless bouncing, speeding, and public indecency. And he is supposed to apprehend him.
Yes, he is supposed to apprehend him, but Officer Griff doesn't really do things by the law.
No. So Marty hits him upside the head with a hoverboard, breaking it in half.
Yep.
Apparently, you can still use a hoverboard if it's broken in half, because that's Marty's on one half and Doc Brown is on the other half, and they are fleeing the police and RoboCop specifically. So then we get to see semis that are hoverboarding and cop cars that are hoverboarding, and everything's hoverboarding, it seems like, as far as that technology goes. Interesting, though, that they avoided a collision with a synthesized fertilizer semi.
Yeah, they did, sadly.
And then they end up back at Doc Brown's place.
Yep.
So.
I just love that they did Officer Griff, because last time we saw Griff in 2015, he was this punk kid on this, power board who went to jail for,
Right.
The clock tower thing. And, this is 20 years later. He's an adult and,
Yeah, it's an interesting take on it for sure. And it kind of sets up the end of this issue where he is outside of Doc Brown's place with his flame-throwing futuristic monster gun. And they're inside, and he believes they're terrorists, and they are trying to figure out what they're going to do to get out of this situation.
Yep.
The Marty on the next cover photo is interesting because now it looks like they've actually just taken a picture of a live-action Marty and tried to stick it on a comic panel.
Yeah. Yeah, I love the end cover, right as Griff is like, track my chems because I've got them cornered, and things are about to heat up. Like when we go to that, the hourglass cover, before we go to the next issue, obviously.
Right.
I love that. That is so cool.
Yeah, it's a cool one. We get an interesting cover, though, on this next part 5. It's like taking elements of this story, elements of the volume 1, different little snippets.
Right.
I mean, you got everything represented. You have like the first types of like planes, you have locomotives, you have horse and chariot, you have our good old dinosaur back, you got the pyramids, you got what looks like RoboCop, you got an army guy, a knight, a jeep, a DeLorean, a Viking, and a monster of some sort.
I could be wrong. I would have to look this up. I think the robot on the left-hand side below the right
T-Rex.
Yeah, I think this was during the time of IDW's ROM thing where they took the ROM character license from Marvel or whatever, and they've got the ROM series now, and I think that's ROM the robot. I could be wrong.
Interesting.
Because I know they were doing a bunch of crossover covers.
Right.
At the time.
Could be. There's definitely a lot of elements on this cover.
Yeah, a lot of cool stuff. And you're right, they pretty much lifted Michael J. Fox's face off the movie, I think, on that cover.
So now we go right back to where we left off. We're in 2035 still, with Griff outside of Marty and Doc and threatening to burn their place down. He's going to huff and he's puffing and gonna blow the place down. So, but he doesn't get to.
Nope, because you and the device will be shut down until the commissioner arrives to override. Shut down. You idiots can't do this again.
And frozen. He gets zapped, electrocuted, something like that. He's unconscious on the ground now. And that buys Doc and Marty a little bit of time. So,
because Doc is like, did Officer Griff Tannen just fall to terra firma incapacitated? 1, I can't believe anybody put the words Officer Griff Tannen in that order. 2, how did you know he got knocked out? And 3, are flamethrowers standard issue for cops in 2035? To answer in reverse, 3, I suspect not, which explains 2 as an administrative shutoff system, and I believe your number 1 will stay there.
Yeah. So definitely interesting here, and they're gonna try to figure things out as we flash back once again to 1893, which is right again before Doc takes off into that time machine and vanishes. So we've kind of gone back a second time to see this.
Back a second time, and it's cool doing this because not only have we done this already, it allows them to tell more of the story from Clara and the boys' point of view, because we have not seen that since a couple issues ago when they were waiting for Emmett.
Right. Yeah. And the other thing it does too, it tells 2 stories. So it tells that story, but it also gives them a chance to tell what happened between that point and when Doc can't remember anything.
Yep.
And him crashing, being in the ceiling with Marty and Jennifer. So it's not just a flashback to have a flashback. It's doing 2 different purposes as far as storytelling.
Yep.
So it kind of shows him again taking off, arriving in 2035, and trying to figure out what's going on, and kind of telling the story of how he is eventually going to lose his mind.
Yep, pretty much.
So again, some more future elements that you get to see. Like a dog being led by a orb, some type of drone that's walking a dog. Drones or cameras that are just always in your face. Kind of goes over some of the like the social media type of stuff, phone type of stuff.
And the fact that people have implants in their brains, like this whole exchange coming up with Doc and this woman. Excuse me, ma'am, who are you talking to? You. Ew, disgusting. Not you, Trey, this pervert in the park. I don't care what you're supposed to call them. He just tried to talk to me in person without scanning first. Like, wow.
Yeah, so he's definitely out of his element here with all the different cameras and stuff like that. We got an advertisement for the 2036 gliders that are now here. So you can get those. And the back to the idea of the rejuvenation clinic. Looking for one of those maybe. And he comes across some letters. One from Marty McFly.
Mm-hmm.
So we get some of that going full circle. Interesting, though, when he shows up at the bank.
Yeah, like, I didn't notice it at first. I didn't even notice it on my reread right before we recorded this. You know, he's talking about, so I stuck with my plan, taking the best precautions available, a more reasonable, if suddenly 20 years out of style, change of clothes. Perfect for what I assume would be a simple banking transaction. We go into the bank, and you just look at the panel where he's, doing the narration of, I had placed a cache of valuable antique comic books under the bank's protection during my stay in 2015. And you look at the security guard right as he's walking in. That's not a normal security guard.
It's Cobra.
Yeah.
Looks like a combination between Cobra and like a Darth Vader type trooper. So it's definitely high security. And then we have the problem here because he doesn't have an implant and he's not going to match the type of person he should look like in 2035. So they don't believe that he could be looking so young for someone who's supposed to be as old as he is. So this banking transaction is not going to go as he planned. And now everybody is after him.
Not just everybody. Like, surely we can come to a arrangement, officer. Of a financial matter. You're trying to bribe me in public. You're trying to bribe an officer of the law. I swear to God, every time Griff says an officer of the law, I'm like, oh, Griff Tannen in the new Judge Dredd movie. Like, seriously. So Griff is this muscle-bound security guard type of thing, and he's like, oh, cameras are watching you. You've been, and then the automatic system is like, Officer Tannen, wait a minute, this ain't my fault. You have been warned on multiple occasions. Listen to me. I said no to the bribe.
Yeah, and then his face is plastered everywhere. So every screen on every building has his face on it, and he is wanted. He's running from the cops, etc. So now this is his chase. He once again goes down to his boxers or his shorts, I guess. He's losing most of his clothes. And then he ends up getting in his little spacesuit, trying to get on the vehicle to travel time to get out of this whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the police tank is following him. And he's trying to get there fast enough. And boom.
Yeah, that's one hell of a police tank.
Yeah. And then he arrives in 1986. Yep. Falling through right in time for Marty and Jennifer to try to hit him with a bat.
Right, and he still doesn't remember anything because the energy or whatever happened to him in 2035 is what made him the cause to lose his memory and all of that, and that's how we get back to this one of all things, and Griff and Marty and Doc and Jennifer, and that's how that one kind of ends where.
Griff has come back too from his electrocution snap, so now he's back awake, going after Marty and Doc. Yep.
Might be right. Yep.
So that's the end of that one.
Yeah, I love the alternate cover at the back of this one. Where we're going, we don't need roads.
It's almost got like the animated version of them.
Yeah, it's pretty much the animated, and it's very like bookish kind of a thing.
Yeah,
with the Back to the Future logo at the bottom there, and then. Part 6, Continuum Consequences. It's got Griff. It's actually a mimic of the Back to the Future posters. of the original posters, where Griff is standing in front of the DeLorean almost, and Marty and Doc, like, was it 2 or 3 or both, where Marty and Doc are just standing next to the DeLorean.
Right.
And that's a mimic of that.
So basically, you have the showdown between Griff and these two as he's trying to apprehend them. He's shooting flamethrowers at them, doing all this stuff, and they're trying to figure out a way to get out of there.
Yep.
Interesting too. They kind of show the headquarters for the police too. Commissioner Wilson, a female.
Yep. It's probably Goldie Wilson's daughter or Goldie Wilson's granddaughter. Like, what if Goldie Wilson III, the son, had, a granddaughter kind of a thing?
Yeah, and then we flash back to 1986, where Jennifer is dealing with who she thinks is Needles, but obviously not, because we have Doc Brown show up. And Marty's in trouble, and Doc is here, and it seems to be a Doc that knows what's going on. So now they're trying to figure something out, while meanwhile, Marty is trying to fend off Griff.
Yep.
So just a lot of action in this one. A lot of, there's not a lot to explain because there's just a lot of action, a lot of visuals.
So much action, so much visuals. You folks just need to read the series. I mean, like, seriously.
But eventually, Jennifer and Doc show up to save Marty. Marty's complaining about how long it took him, but they do show up and pick him up. So now they're all three in the DeLorean. Mm-hmm. And Griff is still hot on the trail.
Of course.
And it's just a matter of them trying to go fast enough to get out of there. And we do end up with Griff taking a spot to get covered in manure once again.
Absolutely.
And then Marty and Doc and Jennifer show back up in 1986.
Yep. Back to 86, folks.
And they do their little thing, have their little kisses and whatnot.
Yep.
Then we flash back all the way to 1893, where Doc Brown shows back up. And Claire and the kids can finally see that he didn't disappear forever.
That's right.
So,
yeah, I dig this. This whole arc was so fun. I mean, just exploring Doc and his memory loss thing, and the whole way the time travel in the Back to the Future thing works. Not only does it work in the movies, obviously, but, like we mentioned earlier about seeing the Clara time, like 2 different times, the whole situation of when he left and when they're waiting. Seeing that 2 different times at 2 different angles, even though it's the same time, it's the passage of the time that happens. And again, these, between John Barber, who's been a long-time writer / senior editor at IDW, and Bob Gale, they're not going to do anything that isn't going to be within the Back to the Future timeline constraints or timeline rules kind of a thing. Like, it's just not going to happen.
And it's interesting, too, because they do find a way to get to both Griff and... So you have a Tannen representative. You also get the Needles thing, and those stories are going on at the same time. I think the only thing I'm missing, maybe if I was trying to stretch for something, is, most of the other stories we've had, they've centered around, as far as the movies go, et cetera, is around Marty visiting versions of his own family. Mm-hmm. Whether it's himself, whether it's his parents, whether it's kids, et cetera, et cetera. He's always been, dealing with that, like seeing those things and how those implications come. And there's none of that in this. You know what I mean? You don't get any of him interacting with any of his 2035 family members, et cetera. You see the Goldie Wilson lineage. You see the Biff Tannen lineage. You don't get to see anything with like the McFly family. So that's my only little nitpick from a story. It would have been cool to find a way to get that involved somehow.
And they actually, I can tell you right now, they're getting to it. It's going to, like, folks, we've done Volume 1 and Volume 2. We're going to do Volume 3 next time. After that, we're going to do the one-shot series Citizen Brown, and then we're going to do Biff to the Future. Volume 4 and 5 tie into the McFly family of the main ongoing. So it's coming.
Gotcha.
So don't be too disappointed.
Otherwise, I like it.
Yeah, what I like about it is that it doesn't. Like, it just shows that it's a continuation of after the whole adventure. Like, they mention the time train, they mention this, they mention that, they mention everything else. Like, I like that it continues after the fact of the movies. Like, we're not going back to the movies are the movies. Those stories are those stories. This is a whole landscape of being able to tell more stories beyond that. Like I said in the last episode, when the first story is how Marty actually met Doc. Like, I really dug that, and I dig that a lot more than just rehashing the story of the films.
Right.
Like, we've had Marty with Marty and Marty with Marty's kids and Marty with whatever. Like I said, they're going to be getting back to the McFly family from what I've seen in the Volume 4 and Volume 5 things, because I think I bought up to Volume 4 for the main ongoing. Volume 5, I think, just came out, and it's like $17-18, so it's not on sale yet. But anyway, Volume 2's alternate covers. We start off with One in the Old West kind of a thing, where it's the classic DeLorean, the train, Marty, Doc, and Jennifer, just Marty, Jennifer, and Einstein, or whatever. It might be Doc and Clara and Einstein. There's Marty and the Bear. That's from the cave.
Yeah, I guess.
There's the 3 DeLoreans. There's that.
That's cool.
That one. There's Marty at the races. Chicken Head. Favorite cover, I know you're going to hate this one. 30 minutes or it's free. With Marty having, like, I wish that said 30 minutes or it's free, butthead. And then this is the one here where I mentioned ROM. It's the alternate ROM cover. That's ROM from the ROM series. I don't know much about it. So there's that, Marty and Doc. And then the book just ends with the final thing. I think you're really going to like Volume 3, because Volume 3 is Who is Marty McFly? And Marty McFly dealing with time stream and dealing with himself and dealing with, quote-unquote, a different... Volume 3 is very interesting. I love the way they did that, because it's not just Marty. Like, it explores the fact that all these time jumps that Marty has taken, all these different alternate timelines he's been to, have created a completely different Marty McFly. So it's going to be very, very good. As far as Volume 2, Continuum Conundrum, I gotta give it a 5. Like, I can't not give it a 5. Like, the art was okay, outside of Marty and Jennifer pretty much throughout the whole thing, outside of their inconsistency, the rest of it was great.
Yeah, I think the art with Marty is just what I didn't like as far as that goes. The story was enjoyable. I don't know if it would have had the same effect. Like, if this was Back to the Future 3 or 4 or whatever, if like this was a movie, I don't know if there was enough there to like wow me like Back to the Future 1 and 2 did. But I still think it's solid. So I mean, I'd probably be like 4.5, somewhere in there.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, folks, as I said, next time in episode 302 of the Pullback, we're going to be talking about Volume 3 of Back to the Future. Who is Marty McFly? So that's going to be interesting as well. Where can the people find you online, sir?
You can follow me on Twitter at OptimusSolo.
I am at TFG1Mike on Twitter. You can follow at The Pullback on Twitter. You can also follow at Geekcast Radio on Twitter. Also check us out on Facebook, Geekcast Radio Network, and The Pullback as well. Make your great escape to comics, and we will catch you next time here inside The Pullback.
See if you bastards can do 90.
For nearly 5 years, The Pullbag has been the GCRN's premier comic book review and discussion-based podcast. I'm Jesse Rass, and if you love comics as much as I do, then you really need to make the great escape into comics with TFG1Mike and the rest of the GCRN crew, only inside The Pullbag.